Recently, I was at Lowe's, waiting in a very long, windy line for the one checkout that was open. And sidling up alongside the line were these two gentlemen, their arms full of goods, and they just kind of snuck right in front of me. Yeah. And my blood began to boil a little bit. And then I realized that I was standing at Lowe's on a Saturday night at 8 o'clock, so I didn't have anything better to do, so I could just relax. In fact, I was going to the grocery store next. It was really very exciting. Have you ever driven down the road and you see signs for an impending lane closure ahead? And everyone just speeds up. Because we want to be there first. I don't know, like there's a prize there. And have you ever looked in your rearview mirror and seen that convertible sneaking along the shoulder of the road as you get closer? It's going to beat you. Makes my blood boil. Sometimes I deputize myself as traffic control and I move over to inhibit their progress. Not that that's a good thing, but I feel better for a minute. And what's all this drama for? To be first into the cattle chute? To be first out? We're all going. We're going to see each other on the other side. We live in this me first. I gotta get there first life. Or have you ever experienced pushy people at work or at school or in a church committee meeting where you're trying to solve a problem and you whisper to your friend, I have this idea. And next thing you know, your friend is sharing the big idea with the whole group and claiming it as his own. Have you ever done that? Makes my blood boil. It's all about being first. When I worked in the library, I taught kindergartners, or I had kindergartners for story time, which was delightful. But talk about being first. They wanted to be first to get their book, first to check out their book, first in the story corner, first in the line, sometimes first in my lap. Just scoot them out a little bit. And so I realized pretty quickly I needed to address the me first issue. So I read them a book by the author Helen Lester and illustrator Lynn Munsinger, who created the Tacky the Penguin books. And some people know those. But this book is about a pig. And it's called Me First. And so I think I'm going to share it with you today. Me First by Lester and Munsinger. Pinkerton was pink, plump, and pushy. He would do anything to be first, even if it meant stepping on snouts, bouncing off bellies, or tying tails. Me first, he cried when he had been last in line and yet finished first down the slide at playground. Me first, he cried at story time, settling on his wide bottom with his big head right in front of the book. And every day in the school cafeteria, you could hear, me first, and knew Pinkerton Pig was around. One Saturday, Pinkerton's Pig Scout troop went on a day trip to the beach. He was first on the bus and sat in the front row. He was first off the bus, first in the water, first out of the water, and first in the picnic basket. After lunch, the Pig Scouts decided to go for a hike. Off they went, with Pinkerton leading the line, of course. And as the Pig Scouts marched across the sand, they heard a faint voice in the distance. Would you care for a sandwich? Pinkerton pricked up his pointy ears. Care for a sandwich? Oh yes, me first, he thought, and he began to trot ahead of the others. Soon he heard the voice again, much closer and louder. Would you care for a sandwich? Me first, cried Pinkerton, kicking up sand and leaving the other pig scouts far behind. His imagination almost burst. Peanut butter, jelly, 2 tomatoes, 7 pickles, a blob of mayonnaise, and a smear of mustard. A sandwich, all for me first. Who would care for a sandwich? Now at full gallop, Pinkerton shrieked, "Me first!" And over the sandy hill he flew and tripped and landed snout first at the foot of a creature with a bump on her nose and hair on her toes. "Oh, I'm glad to see you. I sure could hear you coming. Me first, me first. I guess you really would care for a sandwich." "Yes, indeed," replied Pinkerton. And he jumped up and down so fast that his teeth jiggled. "Good," cackled the small creature. Pinkerton waited. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Well, what?" cackled the witch. "The sandwich! Where's the sandwich?" The small creature curtsied. "You're looking at her. I am a sandwich, and I live in the sand. And you said you would care for a sandwich, so here I am. Come care for me." And all Pinkerton could say was, "But I..." Taking no notice, the sandwich continued. "You said me first. You wanted to be the first to care for me. Well, congratulations. Now, just come on around to my sandcastle." And with that, she pulled Pinkerton's sleeve and hauled him around a few bends before he could even say, "But I..." The gate to the sandcastle had closed. "All right, my pink, plump, and pushy one. Now, you get to care for me. You may have the honor of being the very first to powder my nose and comb my toes." Seeing no way out, Pinkerton powdered her nose and combed her toes. "Next, you may be the very first to put my supper in a bucket and feed it to me with a shovel." Looking around, Pinkerton could see that he had to do it. There was no one else. So he put her supper in a bucket, and he fed her with a shovel. Rubbing her tummy, the sandwich spoke on. "Finally, after you have the privilege of being the very first to wash my dishes, sweep my castle, fold my laundry, curl my hair, and tuck me in, then you can be the very first to read me a bedtime story." So Pinkerton washed all the dishes and swept the entire castle, and he did the laundry and curled her hair and tucked her in. And the sandwich stretched and yawned loudly. "All right, now my story." Pinkerton was so tired he could barely speak. "I don't know any stories," he whimpered. Then how about making up something? Something about a pushy pig who always wanted to be first?" Lived a pig who always wanted to be first until one day he met a wise sandwich. Wise and beautiful. A wise and beautiful sandwich who showed him that being first wasn't always best. "Aha! Have you learned something?" the witch cackled. "Oh, yes, I promise I have." "Well, in that case, thanks for the care. Good luck and goodbye." And she opened the gate. And Pinkerton sped off so fast that he didn't even notice the delicious sandwich that she held out to him. Pinkerton arrived just in time to catch the bus, and on he scooted, pink, plump, and glad to be last. This morning, Lynn read from the Gospel, the accounting of two of Jesus' disciples, James and John, brothers, who approached Jesus with the request to be seated next to him at his right and his left in glory. Even in this intimate cohort of believers that traveled with Jesus and learned from Jesus, this request is very bold and a little off-putting. Jesus responds to them by asking, "Can you also drink from the cup that I'm going to drink from? Will you have the baptism that I'm going to have?" He was asking, and he was referring to his crucifixion upon the cross. They had no idea what he was talking about, even though he had told them previously about what was going to happen. They just assumed it was status quo, what they had been experiencing. And they yelled, "We can!" Which is another way to say me first. Indeed, later in Acts 12, we learn that James does drink from the same cup and experience the same baptism. For sure, he is the first apostle to be crucified under the sword of Herod, all for sharing the gospel. However, the brothers, the two boys' request causes this uproar among all of the disciples, and they may have been embarrassed by the audacity of those two to ask the question, or they may have been a little miffed that they didn't think of it themselves. But either way, it's clear they're upset with each other. So Jesus calls all the boys together to admonish them a little bit. And he talks about corruption and power, and how those in power often become corrupt. And you're with me. You have a position of power in going out and preaching the gospel and preaching a life of service and telling people about me and telling people that I am the King who has come. There is power in that. Don't corrupt it. Instead, he says, and I'm going to repeat what Lynn read to us. He told the disciples, "Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave to all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Jesus called us to serve, and not to serve ourselves first. It's interesting to note that just as James and John were really working to climb that hierarchy, that strata in heaven, to be seated next to Jesus on his right and his left, so also did Pinkerton, the pig, do the same thing. He pushed to get ahead constantly. Me first. And did you recall or did you note that in his last "me first," he ran over the hill and he tripped. Ending up snout first at the toes of this creature. And then he learned his lesson, not by discourse, not by talking, but through service. He powdered her nose, he washed her dishes, he combed her toes, which is a little gross, and he tucked her in. But it was through service that he learned that first isn't always best. It appears we live in a me-first world. When I look at the world around me, when I turn on the news, when I listen to KYW, when I get on my phone and see my news feed, we are bombarded with stories of people in sports and in politics and in entertainment and in our communities who are living a me-first life. You know, the easy thing to do is to join that movement. #MeFirst. But that's not what Jesus calls us to do. He calls us to live a life in service to others. In fact, he modeled that life for us. Was it easy? Not always. We can find national examples. We can find things on the news of people who do not yell me first. I marvel. Jimmy Carter turned 94 October 1st. I marvel every time I read or see something about him working Habitat for Humanity in his 90s. Whatever you think about Bill and Melinda Gates, I marvel that they use their enormous wealth to help people all around the world, and children especially. There are people everywhere who have not adopted a Me First life. We just have to look a little harder to see them. I see children. I hear about children in my class who work at a soup kitchen, who help out at Cradles to Crayons, who are collecting shoes in our building to be shipped to communities that don't have shoes, who help out their neighbors by raking leaves, who come on trustees' work day, and there were children here with bags of pine cones, right, Ray? Working yesterday. Not for themselves, but for others, in service to others. You know, Pinkerton learned that being first was not always best. But it can be. It can be if you adopt a me first to help attitude. Me first to share the good news of Christ. Me first to volunteer. Me first to care. And it doesn't have to be big and momentous every time. The little things matter. So Jesus said to James and to John and the other disciples and to us to put him first and ourselves last. Will you do that?